So we'll discuss some Inyane Purim, as Purim is quickly approaching. So we know there are different levels, different categories of obligation. We know the biblical holidays, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, those are clearly biblical mitzvahs, whether Bizman Hazeh, without a temple, certain laws apply or not, going to the Beis HaMikdash, that's a point of contention, whether they apply at all, the rabbinical. But fundamentally, the Yontiv is no doubt the Yontiv of Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, all these holidays are Minat Torah. And Chanukah is clear, it's a mitzvah midrabanan. It's clearly not only post-biblical, but post-prophets as well, as they say derech drush homiletically, Chanukah Chafei, which means they rested on the 25th day of Kislev, and that's when we begin observing Chanukah. But others point out Chanukah Chafei. We have 24 books of Tanakh. They were discussing whether Chanukah should make the cut, and they concluded no. So Chanukah Chafei, so clearly Chanukah is even after the 24 books of Tanakh. That's clearly a pure midrabanan. However, what is the status of Purim? Purim seems to be somewhere in between. On one hand, it's clearly not biblical. On the other hand, it might not be purely rabbinical either. As we know, we have Megillas Esther. We'll be reading Purim night as well as Purim morning. So this middle category called Divrei Kabbalah. The words of Kabbalah, not Kabbalah, like Madonna and others, but not even real Kabbalah by other people, but Kabbalah meaning let's base the words of the prophets. And the question is, what is the status of Purim? So what is the status of Divrei Kabbalah? On one hand, we find Gemaras that tell us Divrei Kabbalah Kedivrei Torah Dami, that we treat Divrei Kabbalah, obviously it's not, but we treat Divrei Kabbalah like Divrei Torah. On the other hand, we have Gemaras that say that Divrei Kabbalah is like D'Rabbanan. So it's an in-between status, whether it's a more lenient Minat Torah mitzvah or a more stringent mitzvah midrabanan. And in fact, there's a discussion, what is Divrei Kabbalah? Like what qualifies, how do I know something?
Yes.
Who says Purim is even Divrei Kabbalah? Because there's a discussion. The Ran quotes the Megillah from Yerushalmi and others that maybe if you go by the general anything mentioned in the book of Nach, not Tanakh, but Nach, Nevi'im and Ksuvim, so then that has the status of Divrei Kabbalah. If that was the case, then Purim would clearly be Divrei Kabbalah. Others say no, that perhaps it has to be mentioned Derech Sivlei. It has to be mentioned with a specific command. So for instance, interesting, some Achrona make the distinction that when we think about Purim, well, I'm getting a glare in my face, but when we think about Purim, we think of what's the main mitzvah of Purim. You know, we might enjoy different mitzvahs, but when a person thinks of Purim, what do you think the Hamonam, the average person, thinks of? Like that's the most important, or at least one of the major aspects of Purim. Megillas Esther. Somehow people view Megillas Esther, not that it's true, more important. Well, I like to hear the Megillah versus, well, I gave Shalach Manas, or I gave Matanas. We don't. It might be erroneous, but we don't necessarily put those on the same category. You wouldn't view the same person who Shalach Manas with Megillah. We somehow view Megillah with a higher status, or a more important status. And according to this following Achonim, it might be just the opposite. That because what's the source of Shalach Manas Amatanos Gavyonim? That's an explicit pasuk. U'mishalach in the Megillah. U'mishalach Manas Ishlu Re'eo Umatanas Gavyonim. There's an explicit pasuk that commands us in Shalach Manas giving gifts to one another and helping out the poor. That's an explicit pasuk. Where do we learn out the chiyuv of Megillah? You're not going to find the pasuk in the Megillah saying you have to read. It's learned out from the Gemara learns out from a parent. You Yemei Hayamim Niskarim. It says the word Niskar, and we learn, you know what, Niskar means this, and we learn out Megillah, but there's no explicit. So someone claimed that perhaps Megillah is even on a lower level. Maybe if you argue Shalach Manas is Midivrei Kabbalah, but not Kriyas HaMegillah. So that's but Pashtus, most probably assume as long as it's in Tanakh, that's enough for it to get the status of Divrei Kabbalah. But that would be a discussion. So my nafkamina, is there a practical difference whether we view Purim as Divrei Kabbalah or Midrabanan? Like either way, I got to hear the Megillah, I got to do my Shalach Manas, my Matanos V'Avyonim, I have to have my Suda, etc. So my nafkamina, if it's Midivrei Kabbalah or not. So one discussion actually comes up in the Gemara. The Gemara in Megillah, by Purim, it discusses whether the concept of Baal Tosef. We know that we have 613 commandments in the Torah, and there's a biblical prohibition to make 614, and for that matter, there's a biblical prohibition to make 612. It's called Baal Tosef and Baal Tigra. There's a prohibition to add to the Torah, as well as a prohibition to diminish. The one to diminish is obvious. One might think the more the merrier. But we see, called Hamosif Goreya. Sometimes if you add more, you end up losing because
more is less.
Because then more is less, or less is more. Because oh yeah, but this one I added on, so I'll get rid of this one, and you take this, you end up with less than you started. But that's a separate discussion. But there's a biblical prohibition about Tosef. But that's normally associated with what? With mitzvahs. We're about to put on tefillin in the morning, so putting on a fifth parsha in your tefillin, that's clearly about Tosef. Or Sukkot time, adding a fifth species to the lulav and esrog. That's to the Daled Minim, that's clearly. But the Gemara talks about in the context of adding a holiday. The Gemara has a discussion, could we add Purim as a holiday? There was one discussion, could Purim make the cut into the 24 books of Tanakh? That was a separate discussion. Is the book going? I guess the conclusion was yes. I guess the conclusion on both ends was yes, that Purim can be made a holiday. But one of the Gemara over there discusses the issue, and Rashi point. The conclusion was that Esther, she found sources, and the Chacham said okay, but it wasn't just like a simple matter. Okay, let's add Purim. The conclusion was yes, but you had to wrestle through it first. Yeah.
Does the Gemara also discuss whether Megillah Esther should be in the Nach?
Yeah, that's a separate discussion, but
yes,
but that was also a discussion coming with Tommy. Does it fit into the book, etc. Mm-hmm. So Rashi writes over there in the Gemara Megillah. So why didn't the Gemara have the discussion about Hanukkah? There's no discussion about whether it's Baal Tosef by Hanukkah. Why was there issue? Again, the conclusion was no, but why wasn't it even entertained? So Rashi writes because Hanukkah is a pure D'Rabbanan. There's no conflict because when the Chachamim have the power to make institutions or make Dini D'Rabbanan, that's part of the power the Torah gives them. And it's clear, everyone knows this is Midrabanan, but already from the prophets already, it might look like a conflict or it's a higher level, so we don't want to look like it's competing sources, the Navi and the Chumash, so it's more of a danger of an issue. Therefore, the question only came up regarding something which is Divrei Kabbalah. Something Midrabanan that never came up because that's clearly not it's not competitive forces here. We're all working together. But Nevi'im, in fact, we know that a Navi Rashi L'Chadish Dava Mayatar. A Navi is not permitted to make up any new halacha or change anything. He's a Navi Sheker. He's a false prophet, and he's liable to capital punishment. He's Chayav Misa, the pasuk says, etc. But we find the Nevi'im making up different things, like Eliyahu by Har Carmel, not bringing in terms of bringing karbanos. Again, so that's called the Horasha. That a Navi is permitted to make it for a temporary change. It has to be clear it's temporary. It's making a change. Therefore, it's not a conflict. Then it's okay. So we see Baal Tosef. The question gets raised in terms of something Midivrei Kabbalah, but something Midrabanan, the question doesn't even get off. In fact, it's interesting, Be'er Yosef, Rav Yosef Salant, I believe one of the great rabbis in Jerusalem, not now, but in the past century, I believe, not too long ago. He writes in his Sefer Ber Yosef, which is an excellent Sefer on Chumash as well. He points out that we find something unique about Purim and Chanukah, he writes. And he wants to explain along, he takes it even further, because what's unique about Purim, what's a little different than normal is, by Purim, we know, Torah Achasi, that wherever you live, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, any holiday, you celebrate on the same day. Of course, if you have a time zone difference, it might be a little different, but it's still the same day. The day just begins and ends at a different time. And even Israel, you do Yontif Sheni, we don't do it. It's not because it's a Sveika Diyom or it's a custom, but in general, it's Torah Achasi. All of Judaism observes holidays on the same date. So he raises, not his question, the Mordechai in the beginning of Megillah raises, why is Purim 2 days, Yud Dalet and Tesvav? It's a strange thing we don't find by any other Yontif. That Purim, it depends where you lived. If you lived in certain places, you observe on the 14th. If you lived in a walled city from the time of Yeshua ben Nun, you observed on the 15th, or whatever the case may be. So why is it that when they set up the mitzvah on Purim, it was different than all other mitzvahs we have? Yeah.
Purim's Thursday, right?
Wednesday night, Thursday, correct.
Right. So what are they doing in Jerusalem? When do they celebrate Purim?
They celebrate it, so it would be Thursday night, Friday.
Oh, it is Friday?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that there was an issue with it being on a Friday.
No, so that's a separate issue. You mean, I don't think they switch it on Friday. There is an issue that it's called Purim Mishulash B'Yushalayim. When Purim falls out on Shabbos, the Gemara tells us we don't read the Megillah on Shabbos, so we don't have that problem here, but it's Purim Mishulash, not a problem. It's a good thing. You spread out Purim for 3 days, but they go through what you do on different days. When you read the Megillah, maybe you could have the Suda, maybe when you read the,
So they have the Suda Friday afternoon, and then have another Suda Friday evening?
I think in theory we even have it, or that's, in fact, I think Purim can come out Friday even in Chutz La'aretz. I think we've had it within the past 10 years, and there's an issue where they discuss whether people continue into one Suda, you have separate, you have to have an early Suda, because really, people have a mistaken notion that they think you're supposed to have the Suda late in the day. The later in the day, the better. And many begin the Suda like a half an hour before Shkia, and they go in. I'm not saying you're not Yotzei, but the bottom line is the Chiyuv is Suda is B'yom, and I'm saying B'diavad it's probably still okay. You go Basar Haskalah, but really you should have the main part of your Suda during the day. So that's a separate discussion about how you do it. Could you combine the two Sudas as you go in? But I think even in Chutz La'aretz it comes out on Friday, and I remember having it years ago but Purim remains on Friday. When we don't usually have a fast day on Friday, like Titus Esther, and all that type of thing.
Yes.
So they point out that so Purim we usually keep on the. Purim's the only exception to the rule. So why do we have it 2 separate days? So there are many answers. The Mordechai himself gives a different answer we'll get to another time, is because of this issue. People are concerned, the Baal Tosef issue. We want to make it clear that Purim isn't a biblical holiday. So how are we going to make it clear that Purim's not biblical, even if it's different Kabbalah, that we want to make a distinction. So how do we show it? Oh, what's this Yud Dalet Tesvav? Oh, this can't be a regular bib, this must be a midrabanan, a different Kabbalah. So we made, but specifically to make it recognizable within the actual celebration of Purim, we made it in a unique way so everyone would know this isn't a biblical halakha. And that's what he says also by Chanukah.
This is still the commentary of the
Ber Yosef.
Ber Yosef.
Yeah, and he points also.
Very lengthy commentary.
I don't know about that, but we'll discuss that. So he points out that by Chanukah as well. What else do we have unique about Chanukah? We have, usually you fulfill a mitzvah, that's it. And here we have like 3 different levels. You light 1 candle, you fulfill Nerish Ubeso. You go by the members of the household, you fulfill Mahadrin. You go by household times night of Chanukah, you come up with 10 times 8, whatever numbers you want to make up, 80. So where else do we find mahajim and a mahajim? We find it on cheese sometimes, maybe salamis, but where do we find it by mitzvahs? We don't. And that's the way said, because we want to make it clear that Hanukkah is a rabbinical holiday. Don't confuse it with Baal Tosef. The Gemara is only concerned about the Gemara, according to the way Rashi learns the Gemara. The question was only regarding Purim, but clearly Hanukkah, we're not worried about Baal Tosef. And the Be'er Yosef even says, even within the Chazal's institution of Hanukkah, even though maybe it wasn't a competing source, but they wanted to make it clear it's a purely rabbinical and not biblical, therefore they stay away. Another nafkamina, so the one would be whether Baal Tosef even entertained. For Purim it is entertained, but Hanukkah it's not. Another discussion is, what about, let's say, who could lane the Megillah? So normally we know we have something called the Bar Mitzvah. Someone turns 13, they become Bar Mitzvah. Even though it takes more than just turning 13, you have to reach a certain level of puberty as well to actually become a gadol, a halakhic gadol in terms of mitzvahs. Yet our minig is, people are Bar Mitzvah, they turn Bar Mitzvah, they actually lane Kriyas HaTorah. And that's why, why? Because it's something called Chazaka D'Rava, where we go by a Chazaka, that we assume most kids at 13 are considered a gadol. We don't have to actually go check. And therefore we assume, however, this is only true, the poskim say, on a mitzvah midrabanan. Kriyas HaTorah all year round is a mitzvah midrabanan that we fulfill. That Ezra's institution, Moshe, but it was a set up every week. We should read from Kriyas HaTorah. That's only a takana d'Rabbanan. So therefore, for a mitzvah midrabanan, we could rely on Chazaka D'Rava. However, that's why a big issue comes up, Parsha Zachar. Let's say someone gets Bar Mitzvah this coming Shabbat. I'm sure it's not an uncommon occurrence. So it's one thing to read the Torah. What about the Bar Mitzvah boy reading Parsha Zachar? So that's a discussion, a separate share on what exactly is the biblical mitzvah of Parsha Zachar. So I know Rabbi Mordechai Willig, it happened, I think a couple of his kids happened to get Bar Mitzvah on Parsha Zachar. So he didn't want to, he was machmer on this issue. He himself, or someone, I think he himself read it, but he didn't let his son read from Parsha Zachar because, according to the Rush anyway, there's a chiyuv min Torah to read, and according to Tosfos, there's a chiyuv min Torah to read from a Sefer Torah. If it's a biblical obligation, then someone who came by mitzvah is only a safek gadol, so you can't rely on the Chazaka D'Rava. And some also say as well, not only by Parsha Zachar, but perhaps what about reading the Megillah? Should a bar mitzvah boy be reading the Megillah? So again, if you assume that Divrei Kabbalah ke Divrei Torah dami, the Divrei Kabbalah has the status of Divrei Torah, so those who machmer, you should have an experience Baal Kori, not only for Parsha Zachar, by experience I mean in age. I'm not talking about how good he is. He should be good also because it's Parsha Zachar as well. But experience in terms of, he should be clearly a gadol when he's reading Parsha Zachar or the Megillah, yeah.
Is it better to read the Megillah or hear the Megillah?
Right, so they discussed, that's a discussion. It could be the difference between the men's obligation. The Lashon HaGemara is... yeah, but say, b'may nafkamina, let's say it's Shmiya. So that's a separate discussion, but why is it relevant to our question?
Maybe if I can just hear it, doesn't matter, I can hear it from a recording.
But even if he holds the Mishnah Shmi, you still need a bar chiyuv. Everyone agrees you need someone, like let's say for a shofar, let's say we agree that it's shofar, let's say you get a monkey to blow the shofar.
Yes.
So everyone agrees it's a no-go, because it's not just hearing the sounds of a shofar, you have to hear it from someone who's obligated, who's connected to the mitzvah of shofar. So some machmer by Parsha Zachar, that a bar mitzvah boy, or not forget a bar mitzvah boy, even someone who got bar mitzvah 2 months ago, someone has to be a clear gadol, whatever that age would be, or not only that, but even by Mikra Megillah, there are sometimes that people want to read the Megillah. Let's say they become bar mitzvah on Purim time, they want the kids to read the Megillah, and some want their daughters to read the Megillah, which is a separate discussion, but it's also at the bar mitzvah. But that'd be an issue. Besides all the other issues, the issue would be is that if you assume that Megillah is Divrei Kabbalah, so then it would factor into that. So That's a major discussion in terms of the status of Purim, whether Purim is Kedivrei Kabbalah or not. And if it is, then you get into whether Divrei Kabbalah, Kedivrei Torah. Many nafkaminas. Some we just touched on a couple about the issue of Al Tosif, the issue of Chazaka Daraba, and for that matter, it would be Shalach Manas and Matanos Gavyonim, like we discussed. Going to that opinion, if you assume whether Katan, our practice is you send the kids out to deliver Shalach Manas. So if you're there, it's not an issue. But if you just send them out, that's a question. Could you rely on a katan to fulfill this important mitzvah of Mishalach Manas Yisrael? So Purim has a unique status. We know different holidays, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuos, are clearly biblical holidays. Hanukkah is a pure D'Rabbanan. There's a discussion regarding the status of Purim because Purim is in the Nach, in the Megillas Esther, which is a separate discussion in the Gemara whether it was going to make the cut, but we passed and it did. It's one of the 24 books. So it's what they call Divrei Kabbalah. So perhaps we'll see some differences of halacha on whether Purim has the status of Divrei Kabbalah, but whether we treat Divrei Kabbalah like Divrei Torah Dami or D'Rabbanan, we'll have to go see. So there's an interesting machlokes rishonim between the Rambam and the Bali Tosas on the issue of Shechiyanu. We all know we make a Shechiyanu on a mitzvah which comes Mizman Lizman Einotada, an infrequent mitzvah that comes up once in a while. Because of the excitement of doing the mitzvah, we make a Shechiyanu. So clearly the first time we do Megillah is the night of Purim. So clearly everyone says should be, in addition to the blessings of our Mikra Megillah, Shasa Nisam Avoseinu, we make the Shechiyanu. What about the next morning? We're going to read the Megillah again. Do we make a Shechiyanu in the morning? So the Bali Tosas is right, yes. Tosas and Megillah Daf Daled says you do make it. And the Rambam's opinion is no. There is no Shechiyanu Purim morning. So what's the Nakudas HaMachlokas? What's the issue here in terms of whether you make a Shechiyanu Purim morning or not? So the Achronim explain that perhaps the reason why we make a new Shechiyanu is because the Megillah reading we do at night, that's only Midrabanan. In fact, according to some Mefarshim, that was a later institution. In the days of the Gemara, when they had the villagers go into the town on Monday and Thursday, there was no night kriya, according to some. And even if there was, it's only a din d'Rabbanan. But the one in the morning, that's the one I'm obligated in, Divrei Kabbalah from the Megillah. So therefore the Shechiyanu you make on a mitzvah d'Rabbanan on the reading Friday, on the reading the night of Purim, does not count for the, cannot go on the Shechiyanu, which is Divrei Kabbalah, a higher level obligation. And hence the Minhag Ashkenaz is we make a new Shechiyanu in the morning. What about the Rambam, the Sfardim? They don't make a new Shechiyanu. So perhaps they hold maybe even the nighttime is Divrei Kabbalah, or they'll have to come up with some other reason. But that's according to some Achronim, that's in the Nakuda, whether you hold the nighttime waning is also Divrei Kabbalah. The Sfardim apparently assume it is, and us B'nai Ashkenaz, we assume only the daytime, which is the Iker Kriya, only that is Divrei Kabbalah, and hence we require a new Shechiyanu. In a related topic, the Gemara tells us, Nashim Chayavas B'Mikra Megillah Sha'afin Hayu Ba'usanes. Women are included in the mitzvah of Kriyas Megillah because they were involved in the miracle. So Tosfos writes in Megillah and in other places that Afin only applies to a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. So if Afin only applies to a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, that would imply that Purim has the status of a Durabanan. The Divrei Kabbalah is only Durabanan. On the other hand, Tosfos, I believe, in Arei Psachim writes that Afin also applies to a mitzvah deraisa. That could be the Nakuda. So therefore, if you assume it applies to a mitzvah deraisa, it wouldn't be conclusive in terms of where to place Divrei Kabbalah. Would Divrei Kabbalah be Kedivrei Torah Dami or Durabanan? Another instance where this issue comes up is in the Shulchan Aruch Paschal this way. Let's say someone becomes an onain on Purim, and in fact I got the Shiloh last year that someone became an onain on Purim or the night before, and so they wanted to know about reading the Megillah, Basar V'Yayin, etc. So the Rishonim write that one who is an onain may eat meat and drink wine on Purim. How could he eat wine? How could he eat meat and drink wine? Isn't it usher for an onain? So the Rishonim point out that no, because the mitzvah, the Rabbim, the Divrei Kabbalah of Simchas Purim overrides the private prohibition on the onain of not eating Basar V'Yayin. So we see, so that gets into as well, if you assume like those Rishonim, Avelos Yom Rishon, so it's the Machokas Rishonim, also Rambam and Tosfos in terms of is Avelos Deraisa D'Rabbanan. According to the Rambam, Avelos is Deraisa and Simchas Yantiv in general, and Tosfos is both D'Rabbanan. So here, again, depends what assumption you're making, but even if you assume Purim is Divrei Kabbalah, and we see the mitzvah d'Rabbim of Purim, whether it's a mitzvah d'Rabbim d'Rabbanan or a mitzvah d'Rabbim Divrei Kabbalah, beats out the private mitzvah of only not eating Basar V'Yayin. So again, it's depending on which assumptions you make, whether it would mean that Divrei Kabbalah is Kedivrei Torah Dami or Kedrabanan. Or another example would be what's the classical case of a difference between a Deraisa and Derabanan? So generally speaking, it's the case of Suffolk, case of doubt. We have a principle, Suffolk Deraisa L'Chumra, a doubt regarding a biblical law was strict on, Suffolk Derabanan L'Kula, a doubt regarding a rabbinic law we're lenient on. So the Gemara in Megillah tells us that regular cities read on the 14th, walled cities read on the 15th, walled cities on the time of Yeshua ben Nun. So the Gemara wants to know, what about those cities that are in doubt? To vary in other places, it says Safek Muchvas Chama Yeshua ben Nun. It's a doubt whether they consider walled cities on the time of Yeshua. So what do? When do they read the Megillah? On the 14th or 15th? So the Gemara seems to say that they read Megillas Esther both on the 14th of Adar and the 15th of Adar. So if we take this Gemara at face value, it seems to be saying Safek Deraisa L'Chumra. In other words, it seems to Megillah is Divrei Kabbalah, words of the prophets, and therefore we treat a Safek Divrei Kabbalah like a Safek Deraisa, and therefore you have to read the Megillah twice. However, it depends how you learn this Gemara. According to the way the Gaonim explain this, the Gemara is, that was only a Midas Chasidus. They're really strictly speaking, according to the Gaonim, the norm of halacha is you really only have to read on one, because Safek Rabbanim L'Kula. However, as a Midas Chasidus, they read both. And the Rambam, the Torah, and the Shulchan Aruch all write that those cities must read on both days. And they don't learn it as a Midas Chasidus. It's expressed, and therefore we are learning out Safek Divrei Kabbalah Kedivrei Torah Dami. So all these questions of Safek Muchlis Chama Yeshua ben Nun, whether a town was a doubtful, we don't know when it became a walled city, whether it was from the time of Yeshua ben Nun or not. The question of Shechiyanu, the Machokas Rambam and Tosas, whether you repeat Shechiyanu in the morning, the issue of Afein Hayu Ba'osa Anes, and the issue with the Onein, all deal with the issue of whether, in terms of what's the status of Purim, is the status of Megillah, of Divrei Kabbalah, is it treated like a Divrei Torah Dami, or is it treated like a D'Rabbanan? It's interesting to know in terms of what is the definition of Divrei Kabbalah. So, Pashas, according to many, that anything that's mentioned in Nach, that gives it a status of Divrei Kabbalah. That's the Mishnah in Tainis, the Gemara in Sota, that basically anything cited from Nach is, we consider it Divrei Kabbalah. However, the Ran quotes a Yerushalmi, the Ran in Sukkah, Ran in Megillah, which might limit it. And according to some Achronim, I think it's the Dovev Yesharim, that he wants to say no, and based on other sources, it has to be done derech sivoy. It's not enough just to be mentioned in Nach, in Navi, or in Ksuvim. That by itself wouldn't give it the status of Divrei Kabbalah, but it has to be in a pasuk derech sivoy, like it says, Mishalach manos ish l'reyehu u'matanas Rav Yonim. So it's given derech sivoy, those are Divrei Kabbalah. But interesting, according to the Dovev and Sharim and others, that but maybe Megillah we only learn out in hint form, Ramiza, Yamim Niskarim and Nasim, we only learn out through indirect means, that from indirect means, that the Mikra Megillah, so it would become a little ironic that Mikra Megillah, according to this, would only be D'Rabbanan, but Shalach Manas Amatanas Rav Yonim would be Divrei Kabbalah. It's only ironic because the average person treats Megillah like it's a much more important mitzvah than Shalach Manas Amatanas Rav Yonim. And in fact, another difference could be as well is, what about a bar mitzvah boy reading the Megillah? We know all year round we are lenient that a bar mitzvah boy could read the Torah for the Olam. What do you mean, well, lenient? He's bar mitzvah, so he's a gadol, so not so simple. You have to be 13, plus you have to reach puberty. So therefore, we don't know if the child actually reached puberty or not, so therefore it's only a suffix. But since Kriyas HaTorah we read all year round, there's only a D'Rabbanan, so we work with the general principle, Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, and therefore we'll lean Chazaka D'Rabba. And that's why, based on this coming Shabbos, we could have the only Kriyas HaTorah, the only biblical reading, Parashat Zachar. According to Tosas, it's Minat Torah, you have to read it from a Sefer Torah. And according to the Rush, it's Minat Torah, you have to even read it for Tzibor. So, according to Tosas and the Rama, that require a Sefer Torah, and the way we do it, so according to them, perhaps a katan should not be reading, because this is a din that we're only lenient all year round because it's Safek D'Rabbanan L'Kula, but this is a biblical law, so we have to be strict. And some want to extend it. Not only are we strict regarding Parashat Zachor, which is clearly biblical, but also Mikra Megillah. Since Megillah, Purim have a status of Divrei Kabbalah, and according to different Achronim, Divrei Kabbalah ki Divrei Torah Dami, that Divrei Kabbalah has the status of Divrei Torah. So therefore, perhaps one should be machmer as well, that a bar mitzvah boy shouldn't learn the Megillah until he gets older, because perhaps it's a chiyuv daraisa, divrei kabbalah, divrei Torah, and therefore you don't want to be yotzi to a katan. Perhaps, maybe then, if this is true based on its logical conclusion, if we learn, like we're saying the Balitosis learn, that the nighttime kriya is only d'Rabbanan, and the daytime kriya is Minat Torah, or B'divrei Kabbalah, that's why we need a new Shachiyano. So perhaps if a mitzvah boy then Kulain in Leil Purim, but not the day of Purim. Again, so, people have different minhagim. Maybe some don't let them read it all, some are makbid for this and they could read it both. And perhaps we can make a distinction if the bar mitzvah boy is going to read one of them, so best to read the night one, because that's only midrabanan, and therefore it's not an issue for a katan to be moti agado. So that's the chumrah people have by Parshas Zachar, that a katan, and I think Rabbi Mordechai Willig had two sons who had bar mitzvah on Parshas Zachar, so they read the whole parsha and he read over Parshas Zachar. So those who are makbid for Parshas Zachar, which is clearly deraisa, and then there are further those who extend it to Mikra Megillah, which has the status of Divrei Kabbalah, and Divrei Kabbalah could Divrei Torah dummies. That's what we explained. What's the parameters of Divrei Kabbalah, whether it has to be just in Nach or it has to be Lashon Tzivoy, and it's a discussion whether Divrei Kabbalah is a more lenient mitzvah min Torah or a stricter din Rabbanan. Those are the different issues we discussed to illustrate this tension, is whether the Shechiyanu in the Megillah the next morning, the issue of Avhein, the fact that it applies, but since Tosfos writes in Avrei Psachim, it applies to D'Oraisa, so it wouldn't prove anything. We have the issue, we said, of the Shechiyanu. We have the issue as well of the Onein, that he could eat on Purim, because the mitzvah d'Rabbim of Simcha overrides the individual law of only Rabbi Lis. And then we discussed the Gemara about Safek Muchlis Chama, Yeshua ben Nun. Why do you read both days, Yudalit and Tezvav? Is that, as the Gonim say, it's just a Midas Chasidus, and really Safek Rabbanan L'Kula? Or like the Rambam might know, it's Me'ikar Adin, and we see Safek Divrei Kabbalah, K'divrei Tov. So those are some of the issues in terms of the status of Purim, whether we treat Divrei Kabbalah like a Daraisa, or we treat Divrei Kabbalah like a D'Rabbanan.